Hi everyone, welcome back to Mohivate. I'm Dr. Mohi Sarawgee, a GP by profession, but here I'm swapping prescriptions for perspective. A quarter of 2026 has already passed, and if this is the year of the horse, I wonder if the horses have left the stable. I'm beginning to question their work ethic, though I hope that many of you are feeling some momentum and that good things are finding their way to you. Today we are talking about screen time, something every parent I know is either worried about, in denial, or quietly Googling, is 4 hours of YouTube actually that bad at midnight? Before you roll your eyes and think, oh God, another person telling me I'm ruining my child, this is not that. This episode is not a lecture about parenting, a list of rules, or a guideline recitation. It is a conversation from a doctor to anyone who has a child in their life. And I want to start with something that might feel a little uncomfortable. I say that with complete warmth. There's a pattern I've noticed over the years. If someone asks me about something they want to understand, they are delighted with the answer. They came looking for information, they received it, and everyone is comfortable. But sometimes, in a casual conversation, when you offer something extra based on observation, on experience, on what the science is showing us, it lands differently. Suddenly, it becomes unwelcome. When doctors speak about health with someone they care about, that care gets reframed. We are told we are being clinical, that we are treating them like a patient. And this is something many doctors quietly navigate, particularly with family, friends, and acquaintances. There is no prescription, no consultation fee, no agenda. When a doctor discusses health with someone they care about, that is not a clinical transaction. It comes from the same place it always has, a genuine wish for that person to be well. And when it comes to children, that reaction can become even stronger. So I want to say this clearly. I am not a parent, and there is a sentence I have heard many times, usually not meant unkindly, I hope, but the implication is there. You're not a parent, you don't understand. And perhaps there is truth in that. I haven't felt the exhaustion of 3 a.m. feeds. I haven't known the fear of a first fever. I understand why many parents would rather hear this from someone who has lived it, and I respect that completely. But here's what I have: 15 years of consulting rooms, hundreds of children, hundreds of families, and a front row seat to what unfolds, not in the moment, but years later, when patterns that once felt manageable become something harder. When a parent sits across from me and asks quietly, did I do this? Over the years, as a doctor, you learn discernment. You learn when to speak and when to stay quiet. And whether that is wisdom or whether it is self-protection, I'm honestly not always sure. But I also have a platform, and I choose to use it not to tell anyone how to parent, but to share what the science says, clearly, honestly, and with the deepest respect for every parent doing their absolute best in a world moving faster than any of us anticipated. Because once you understand what's happening inside your child's brain, the choices you make become yours, informed, confident, and feeling like love in action. As always, what you do with the information is entirely yours. That is true of everything we explore together on Mohivate. So whether you're the parent at school drop-off who swears their 6-year-old only watches documentaries about coral reef, or the parent who just handed over the iPad to get through one uninterrupted call, this one is for you. So let's begin. 20 years ago, a child's screen time was bounded. It might have meant a cartoon on a weekend morning or a short stretch of television after school. Screens were mostly in the living room. They were shared and finite. They had credits that rolled and told you it was over. Then smartphones arrived. Then tablets. Then YouTube. Each one more immersive and infinite in a way the television never was. And then a pandemic arrived and everything changed overnight. COVID did something that no policy, no guideline, and no parenting book had prepared anyone for. It made screens the only classroom, the only playground, the only social space available to children for months. Parents suddenly had no choice. Schools went online, friendships went online, birthday parties went online. Children who had never spent more than an hour on a device were suddenly on screens for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And when the world opened again, the habits remained. The algorithms had spent those months learning what kept children watching. And the children had spent those months learning that the screen was where life happened. We are living in the wake of that, and parents are navigating it largely without support. And now artificial intelligence has arrived. Tools that can tutor, converse, create, and entertain with a sophistication no previous generation has encountered. The first children whose developing brains exist alongside AI as a daily companion are in classrooms and bedrooms right now. The long-term data does not yet exist. These children are living the experiment. That is the world you're parenting in, and that context matters before anything else. Let me paint a scene. You're at the dinner table or on a long car journey. Your child is restless, overwhelmed, and you hand them a phone or a tablet. And it works. They settle, you breathe, the moment passes. And somewhere, maybe not that evening, maybe weeks later, when it has become the only way they will sit still at a meal, a quiet unease settles in. Should I have done that? When did this start? You're not the first parent who has been here. You will not be the last. And the fact that you're asking the question at all means you're paying attention, which is more than most algorithms want you to do. So let's talk about what is actually happening inside the brain from the very beginning. A child's brain is not a small adult brain. It is a completely different stage of brain. From birth to around age 5, the brain is doing the most extraordinary thing it will ever do. It is building, wiring, creating what we call synaptic connections, the pathways along which every thought, emotion, impulse, and skill will travel for the rest of that person's life. At its peak, a child's brain makes roughly 1 million new neural connections every single second, a million per second. And what feeds that process is experience, specifically touch, conversation, eye contact, play, boredom, frustration, resolution, creativity. Real-world sensory experience is the raw material of brain development. So when we ask what screen time does to a developing brain, we are really asking what happens when we substitute a significant portion of that raw material with a screen. There is a scientifically documented phenomenon called the video deficit effect. Children under approximately 2 years old learn significantly less from screens than from equivalent real-life interaction. A screen can show a child the same word, the same action, the same face, and the brain simply does not process it the same way. The child needs a real person responding in real time to truly absorb and learn. And that is not a moral judgment. That is what the science says. The research has a lot to say, and I want to walk you through the key findings, what is strong evidence, and what is still emerging, because this conversation deserves nuance. Let's start with language. Multiple large studies show that children with higher screen time at age 2 have measurably lower language scores at ages 3 and 5. Because language develops through what researchers call serve and return interaction. I say something, you respond, I respond back. A screen talks at a child. It doesn't wait, it doesn't adjust, it doesn't look into their eyes. Even the most beautifully produced educational program cannot replicate the developmental power of a 10-minute conversation with a caregiver. And then there is attention. Fast-paced content and games provide what neuroscientists call high-frequency dopamine hits. Every scene change, every notification, every level up is a tiny reward signal. When the brain becomes accustomed to stimulation at that frequency, slower stimuli, a teacher's voice, a picture book, a conversation begin to feel almost unbearable. And this is where dopamine matters. And I dedicated an entire episode to it. So I'll just say this. The same mechanism that makes slot machines impossible to walk away from is embedded into every app your child uses. Children and adults too are up against $1 billion industry of behavioral engineers whose entire job is to make the app impossible to put down. And if there's one thing I want every parent to hear, it is this: what screens are doing to sleep. Across every age group, every country, every study design, one finding is completely consistent. Screens before bed disrupt sleep. The blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, the hormone that signals to the body that it is time to sleep. Without melatonin rising at the right time, sleep onset is delayed, duration shortens, quality reduces. During sleep, growth hormone is released, memories consolidate, emotional regulation develops. The brain processes the day's learning. A child consistently sleeping less than they need is not just tired. Their brain development is being impaired at its foundation. If you take one thing away from this episode, consider this: screens out of the children's bedroom, no devices in the hour before sleep. The evidence behind this is the strongest in the entire field. And then there's one finding that genuinely stopped me, and it lives in the eyes. We are in the middle of a childhood myopia epidemic, short-sightedness to use the everyday word. In Europe, nearly half of young adults are now affected. In East Asian populations, up to 80 to 90% of young people finish school with myopia. Global projections suggest that by 2050, nearly half the world's population will be myopic. For a long time, we blamed genetics, but genes don't change that fast. What changed? Children stopped going outside. The mechanism is beautiful science. Natural light stimulates dopamine release in the retina, which regulates healthy eye growth. Without sufficient outdoor light, the eyeball literally elongates, and that is myopia. The fix is not less screen time alone, it is more outdoor time. 2 hours of outdoor light daily is consistently protective across the research. The prescription is not eye drops, it is going outside. Eyes need distance. Children need to look up and out. And it is not just myopia. Dry eyes, irritation, redness, symptoms we once associated with adults at computers all day are now presenting in children. Screens reduce our blink rate significantly. The eye needs blinking to stay lubricated, and children are presenting with dry eye symptoms at ages we simply did not see before. And finally, in this section, the adolescent picture. In teenagers, the research shifts specifically towards social media. Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist whose book, The Anxious Generation, sparked a global conversation, and Dr. Jean Twenge, whose decades of longitudinal research tracks generational mental health trends, both show clear correlations between heavy social media use and rising rates of anxiety, depression, and poor body image. The mechanisms are not mysterious. Social comparison, cyberbullying, which disproportionately affects girls through appearance-based content and boys through aggression and humiliation, sleep disruption, and the displacement of in-person socializing, which remains the single most protective factor for adolescent mental health. The numbers are difficult to look away from. Adolescents spending more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of depression and anxiety. The average teenager currently spends 3.5 hours a day on social media. And in the UK, the most recent NHS mental health survey found that over a quarter of young people aged 16 to 24 are now affected by a common mental health disorder, rising to more than a third among young women. Correlation is not causation. Adolescents who are struggling may turn to screens more. The arrow can go both ways, but the consistency of this pattern across countries, across data sets, across age groups makes it very difficult to dismiss. And the one thing that does appear clearly protective, genuine in-person connection, not followers or likes, actual human beings in the same room. So let's understand how things changed. Every platform before TikTok showed you content you searched for or content chosen by people you followed. You had some agency over your experience. TikTok and Instagram Reels changed this entirely. The algorithm shows you content it predicts you cannot resist, refined by artificial intelligence, personalized in real time, optimized not to inform or entertain in the traditional sense, but to maximize the time you spend watching. The next video begins before you have finished processing the last one. There is no natural stopping point. The scroll is infinite by design. And here is what makes this particularly significant for young people. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that says, I should probably stop now, is not fully developed until the age of 25. You are offering an experience engineered to maximize compulsive use to a brain not yet equipped to resist compulsion. The problem here is not the screen. The problem is the design. So now we have the science, we understand the causes. Let's look at what the world's health organizations actually say. The WHO, the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and 41 documents from scientific societies and governments worldwide have all reviewed the evidence. And in 2024, these organizations made something clear. The question has shifted from asking how many minutes to asking what kind of screen time, in what context, with what oversight. Here is what that looks like by age. Under 18 months, this is the most critical developmental window in human life. The brain is forming its foundational architecture for language, attachment, emotion, and cognition at a pace it will never again achieve. What it receives in these months matters more than at any other point in a human life. The guidance is clear. No passive screen time. Video calls with family? Yes, always. Because a video call is contingent interaction. Someone responding in real time to your child's signals. A screen playing a video cannot do this. Then 18 months to 2 years. A transition window. High quality educational content can begin, but always with a caregiver present, not as background. Present, engaged, watching together, commenting, pausing, connecting what is on screen to the real world. The brain at this age is beginning to bridge 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional experience, but it still needs help. Co-viewing is the bridge. Then 2 to 5 years, maximum 1 hour per day of high quality content. And quality matters enormously here. Sesame Street, designed with developmental psychology embedded into every episode, produces significantly different outcomes than algorithmically recommended YouTube content. A creative app that asks a child to respond, to think, to build is different from passive video watching. The difference is not subtle. Preschool-aged children need physical activity, a minimum of 3 hours daily. They need unstructured play. They need boredom, because boredom is where imagination begins. Screens displace all of these through convenience, and convenience, unchecked, accumulates. Co-view wherever possible. Talk about what you're watching. Pause it. Ask what they think happens next. The screen becomes a tool rather than a substitute. Then 6 to 9 years. This is where the habits of a lifetime begin to form. Attention span, reading stamina, the ability to sit with something that requires patience, all are being built or undermined in these years. 2 hours of recreational screen time per day combined across school and home is the commonly cited upper limit for non-educational use. Screen time should not displace sleep, physical activity, face-to-face interaction, or learning. And this is the age at which something new becomes possible. Media literacy. What is this designed to make me feel? Who made this and why? Does watching this make me feel good or leave me feeling empty? Children this age can begin to answer these questions with guidance. Then 10 to 12 years, the average age of first social media use is now 8 years old. 8. Identity is forming. Belonging matters more than almost anything, and a platform that quantifies belonging through likes and followers is particularly powerful in hands that have not yet developed the emotional tools to contextualize it. This does not mean complete prohibition, which often drives behavior underground. It means this is the age at which conversations become essential. What are they seeing? Why do they feel what they feel after scrolling? And what is the technology actually designed to do? And then 13 and beyond. The teenage brain is not a small adult brain. It is a brain in active reconstruction. As we discussed, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until around age 25. The compulsion teenagers feel towards social media is partly biological. The technology is exploiting a developmental stage. More screen times in adolescence is consistently associated with worse sleep, reduced physical activity, increased anxiety, and greater rates of depression, including body image concerns, bullying, and harassment. But screens used for genuine connection, messaging close friends, imbalance, video calling, or collaborative learning with people they actually know appear to have protective rather than harmful effects. The issue is passive, algorithmically driven consumption, scrolling alone, late at night, without end. And the world is beginning to respond. In January 2026, schools became mobile phone-free environments by default across England. Not a recommendation, a default. A national consultation on children's social media use is currently underway, exploring minimum age for access, overnight curfews, and restrictions on design features like infinite scrolling engineered to maximize compulsive use. And in March 2026, new guidance for under 5s named sleep, play, and face-to-face interaction as the 3 non-negotiables of early childhood development. This makes me happy because this is finally a government responding to evidence that has been building for a decade. Now let's discuss the clinical part. Parents come into the consulting room exhausted, worried, sometimes carrying guilt for a long time. They describe children who cannot sustain attention in a conversation for more than a few minutes. Teenagers who become genuinely anxious when separated from their phones. Children who have encountered content online that no child should ever see and who have been carrying it silently. And they ask quietly, did I cause this? The honest answer is no single decision a parent makes creates or prevents these outcomes. What we are seeing is the compounding effect of an environment that changed faster than any of us were equipped for, and that was intentionally engineered by sophisticated technology to be as compelling as possible to the least defended minds on earth. You did not design the infinite scroll. You did not build the algorithm that learned what your child could not resist. You handed a child a device in a moment of exhaustion or necessity or genuine love. That is a very human thing to do. What matters now is not the guilt. It is the intention and the information going forward. So here is a framework, not rules, just 3 things to keep in mind. Think of the 3 C's: content, context, and child. Content, what are they watching? Was it made for connection, learning, or creativity? Or was it made purely to keep them watching? Passive, algorithmically driven content is fundamentally different from educational programming or creative engagement. Then, context. Are you sometimes present? Do you occasionally watch with them? Do you talk about what they see? A parent who knows their child's digital world can guide it. A parent kept entirely separate from it cannot. Then, child. How old are they? What stage of development are they at? What do they need right now? The same principles apply very differently at different ages. And a simple lens worth keeping: creating versus consuming. A child making something on a screen uses completely different neural circuits than one passively scrolling. Connected versus isolated. Screen time that connects to real relationships is qualitatively different from solitary consumption at midnight. Bounded versus boundless. A child who knows screens go off at a consistent time develops self-regulation. One who negotiates every single night does not. Practical anchors the evidence consistently supports: screens out of the bedroom, no devices in the hour before sleep, meal times as screen-free time, 2 hours of outdoor light daily wherever the daily allows, and the 20-20-20 rule for everyone. Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. Your eyes need it too. For teenagers, conversations, not confiscation. Adolescents who feel genuinely heard self-regulate far better than those who feel monitored and restricted. Ask what they are watching. Ask what makes them feel good. Ask what leaves them feeling empty. And then there is the one that applies to all of us: your own screen use. Children do not do what we say, they do what they see. If you're reaching for your phone constantly, this is what normal looks like to them. But, and this matters, the goal is not to perform a phone-free life for your child's benefit. It is to model what intentional, balanced use actually looks like. There will be times when you need your phone, a call you've been waiting for, a message from your friend or family, work that genuinely cannot wait. That is real life, and children benefit from seeing that too, that screens serve a purpose, and that purpose has limits. The goal is not to eliminate screens. It never was. The goal is balance, with your child's age, development, and well-being kept clearly in mind. Because what matters now is not perfection. It is the awareness and the information going forward. So here we are. You're raising children in a world that did not exist when you were a child, in conditions no previous generation of parents has navigated, with technology that evolves faster than the science studying it. 5 years ago, this conversation looked different. 5 years from now, it will look different again. The children being raised today are the first generation growing up alongside artificial intelligence as a daily presence. We do not yet know what that fully means. What we do know is this: children need play, unstructured, undirected. They need sleep. They need face-to-face interaction with people who know and love them. They need outdoor time, natural light, and distance. They need boredom, because boredom is where creativity lives. And they need parents who are paying attention. You are those parents. You are asking the questions. You are here. The world gave you an unprecedented challenge, and even by standards of parenting, which has never been straightforward, nobody saw this one coming. And you're navigating it with love, imperfect information, and the honest intention to do right by the children in your care. That intention is not nothing. That intention is everything. I hope something today stirred a thought, gave you a pause, or simply made you feel a little less alone in this. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Mohi. Until next time, remember this: attention is one of the most powerful things we give our children, and perhaps learning where to place it is how we begin to come home to ourselves.